Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 11 of the Vuelta a España 2024, brought to you by Lupine Lights. Lupine Lights, the finest lights I've ridden throughout my career, and I've been riding them since 2019. With, of course, an app on your phone to dim and raise each level of your lights so you can work your battery to the proper amounts to get the whole length out of your ride with it. And, of course, Bluetooth technology to be able to go through all your settings from anywhere on your person. Now, if you want to save 24% on your next order of Lupine Lights, make sure you use the code LupineLights24. Let's get into today's stage 11. This is going to be a good one. We're going to end up with two races going on between a breakaway battle and the GC battle. There's no doubt about it on today's stage. When you look at the profile at 166 kilometers, call it 105 miles in length with 4 category climbs, it's twisty, and they have kind of two circuits with the same climb that they're going to do twice, and then they'll leave that and they'll do another loop and come back to the finish line. They'll pass the finish line at 100 kilometers to go, 60 kilometers to go, and of course at the finish of today's stage. When the cameras come on, we got about 110 miles, 105 miles into the stage, and we see it's our man Victor Campenaerts up at the front going solo. There's action happening throughout this stage, so you know before the cameras came on that it was full-blown, everyone trying to make the break in today's race here for stage 11 of the Vuelta a España, but it's Victor Campenaerts up there, and he's got some company coming with about 5 guys. That will not be the end of it as we see Victor Campenaerts come through the start-finish line here. Once he passes it with 100 kilometers to go, the group keeps getting bigger and bigger. We start looking at it growing to about 30 riders in size, and then we see as the road finally narrows up, what do we got? We got AG2R spread all the way across the road. There's 7 guys. Wout van Aert's up there too, trying to slow this group down because the big group of 30-plus riders is going up the road. As the road is narrowed, this allows this to happen with one team and one Wout van Aert to block the road. Now it doesn't stay blocked all the way because we see on the right side of the road there's going to be attack. It's him, Hess Limraes, and it's George Bennett from Israel Premier Tech. As George Bennett's the second rider coming out of the group on the right side there, he's going to bump hard, of course, with AG2R, Victor Lafay, and then he's going to keep accelerating, and those two riders are going to catch a group right in front of them, and they're going to bridge up to the original group, we'll call it 30 guys, but now it's looking like 35, 36 riders. You make the call on it, doesn't matter, but it's a ton. Now we go back to the group, we see AG2R is still spread across the road. Now we look on the left side of the road, that's Richard Carapaz in the pink jersey there. Shortly after that, his teammate Darren Rafferty comes up, and Darren Rafferty has to push his way out on the left side right there. He pushes his way out. Then we see Carapaz starting to slide up there next to Parapente, I'll call it. And then the tree gets in the way. Next thing you know, when the pictures come out from under the tree there, Carapaz is hitting the deck hard. Now we see that Darren Rafferty's coming back into the peloton, and we'll see that Bouchard there's having all kinds of words there with Darren Rafferty. I'm sorry, AG2R, you guys were in the wrong here. You don't have any right to be arguing with Darren Rafferty from EF Education. His job's to make it in the break. Your job is to cover the road and try to block the road. I have no problem with that. But anytime you're blocking the road and you're one of the riders blocking the road, you need to be prepared to get bumped. Now, I've seen guys come from the back at full sprint and hit riders and take them out, and everybody crashes. It's an ugly scene. Nobody from the back trying to make the front break has the go-ahead to come full gas into some rider blocking the road because he has the right to block the road, but you got to be prepared to get bumped. Every time someone was blocking the road on me, I'd come up and I'd definitely bump them, or I'd pass them and I'd swing them hard so that they had to bump their teammate to avoid crashing. It's called a little bit of love there, but I never crashed anyone. And I wasn't trying to crash anyone. I was just making it known that if you're going to block the whole road, you're going to get bumped. But when we start looking at AG2R yelling over there at Darren Rafferty, you're in the wrong. You're blocking the road. Be prepared to get bumped. That's the way it is. The cameras go back, and we're going to find Richard Carapaz with a couple teammates that are bringing him back onto the back of the peloton because remember, Richard Carapaz, third on the general classification. He had a fantastic stage 9 where he was trying to go solo and help with Darren Rafferty going across to that original break that had Adam Yates that won stage 9. So now it's important for the EF Education rider to get back up to this front group. He does, and then we start seeing the breakaway up front of 35, 36 riders. Doesn't take too long for Zandra Mayus to start attacking. Once Zander Mayus from Alpecin de Koenig's going up the road, now you got to start looking at some organization happening in this huge break of 35 riders. The most important thing when you look at this break, riders missing, teams missing that is AG2R's not up there, EF Education's not up there. That's why Darren Rafferty was trying to get across, but those two teams didn't make the break. Bora Hansgrohe have 3 riders up there. Patrick Gamper is up there, Nico Dins is up there, and Danny Martinez is in this front group. But more important than those 3 riders is you got to look at the 4 from Israel Premier Tech when it was George Bennett was the last to bridge across to put 4 riders up there. Corbin Strong's up there, Riccatello's up there, and of course Marco Frigo is up there to get 4 riders for Israel Premier Tech. Why is that important? Well, the highest on the general classification at just over 9 minutes, that's George Bennett. So that means Israel Premier Tech need to start doing some work on the front of, sorry, I almost called it the peloton. You could call it the peloton, but it's 35 and it's not the peloton. So the front of the breakaway, Israel Premier Tech start getting on the front, but they're not well organized. They're all over the place. They're getting a little bit of help, and 20 kilometers will go by before we see Corbin Strong get up there and have some talks with Frigo, and they decide they're going to ride for general classification for George Bennett to gain some time here on the GC at the Vuelta a España and try to move the New Zealander rider up in the top 10 of the general classification. So they started riding the front, but they wasted 20 kilometers. Once they started riding the front, the gap's out to about 6 minutes, and they're still not gelling well up there. Israel Premier Tech are still kind of all over the place. Frigo's up on the front, Riccatello's up on the front, Corbin Strong's up on the front, but they're all kind of mixed up and having some issues at the front of the peloton. They're going to pass the finish line again with 60 kilometers to go, and when they come into the 3rd climb here of today's stage, there was 4 total, and like I said, 2 and 3 is the same climb. So they're going up the same climb that they did before. And we're going to see Corbin Strong get on the front of the breakaway, and then he's going to blow and pull off to the left side. Once he blows, it's time for Frigo to go to work. Now, what's he doing? Well, he's a knucklehead. There's no doubt about it. Israel Premier Tech are a knucklehead. They have wasted so much energy throughout this stage that they could have just been riding a steady tempo. Now they got Frigo on the front of this 35 rider break, drilling it, blowing it up, but he's still got 10, 12 guys with him. At this moment, what are you going to do? You dropped one of your teammates, Corbin Strong, early on this climb, so you won't have him going over the top. The climb's only about 6%, 6 kilometers long, but it's hurting the legs of a lot of guys in this break because it's 35 guys and they're not all climbers. But as I said, when you look at the group of about a dozen riders, we see Danny Martinez up there from Bora Hansgrohe. You know he's not going to pull, so there's no one in this front group's going to want to work up there when they still know that George Bennett's a GC threat, so the group is still not gelling. We still got one rider that's solo. He's been solo for a long time now, Zander Mayus from Alpecin de Koenig, and they haven't gained any time on one rider up there. Then we start seeing a little bit of hand waving there from George Bennett, from Frigo at the same time, trying to get everybody motivated after they brought it into a dozen riders, but no one's motivated because Danny Martinez isn't going to pull through, and most likely half the guys in this group won't pull through. So unless you get a lucky scenario of the group splits in half and George Bennett's in that front group, well, no one's going to work with George Bennett, so it means just get on the front and start riding, but you already dropped Corbin Strong at the beginning of this climb, so you're down one rider. Now you have 3 Israel Premier Tech riders, and of course George Bennett's not going to ride because he's going for GC, and he has to do the most difficult climb. That starts at about 10, 11 kilometers to go, and that climbs 3 kilometers at over 9%. It's a beast of a climb for 3K, so you got to have good legs. That means they got 2 riders on the front, with Riccatello pulling and with Frigo doing most of the work. But again, they're still not gelling well up there, and they're never well organized. George Bennett's more at the back of this group more often than he is at the front with his teammates, and that's why we see the back of the guys who are all dropped going up that 3rd climb on today's stage 11 come back about 10K later, so we're back to another 30-rider group. Now we're coming into about 35 kilometers to go, and Movistar start getting interested right now because the gap's still at about 6 minutes, and they don't want to have George Bennett become a threat to Enric Mas, so they're going to start riding the front. And when we go up front and we see Zander Mayus, he's getting pulled back right now, so everything's going for the stage win in this group of about 30-plus riders. Shortly after that, we're going to see 2 riders drop out of this group. That's going to be Nico Dins and Patrick Gamper. those guys are dropping back because we're coming under 20 kilometers to go, and it's going to get interesting when we come into the battle for that last right turn to start the super hard climb. That climb's going to summit with, like I said, about 8 kilometers to go, so you know it's an important turn, and that's why Primož Roglič is calling back his 2 super domestiques there, because these guys can't climb, so they can't win this day's race out of a 30-rider group. Up front, Victor Campenaerts is throwing in attack with 15 kilometers to go, so it has to be Frigo up there and Riccatello that have to close the gap, along with some other help from this group of 30. As they close up on Victor Campenaerts, he's not done yet. He's going to throw in another attack with about 12, 13 kilometers to go. This time he's got 6, 8, 10 riders with him. It's getting pretty large, but guess what? Israel Premier Tech's George Bennett didn't make this group, so it's time for Frigo to get back on the front again. As Frigo's trying to hold this gap at about 20 seconds, 15 seconds to that group of, we'll call it about 10 riders up there with our man Victor Campenaerts pulling full gas for Lotto Destiny. Things are starting to get interesting in the peloton back there as we see Gamper and we see Nico Dens get caught, and we see Movistar still on the front with help from AG2R, of course. Now we go back up to the front. We're coming into about 10 kilometers to go, where the final climb is going to start proper. We'll call it 10 and a half, 11. And we see the group of the front group there of 10 with Victor Campenaerts on the front come in here full gas. As Victor Campenaerts starts to blow, this front group here is just disintegrated with attacks, and we're going to see Verona throw in an acceleration. Barada's up there, and we're going to see Filippo Zana from Jaco Lula go. Now with these 3 riders up front, it's getting interesting as everyone's chasing from behind, but George Bennett's in the middle of the group here still without the legs to be able to start closing gaps. Hopefully he gets some luck. Now as those guys are going up the climb, we're going to see Max Poole start jumping across. The DSM riders flying across. Zana up there starting to drop out of the back from Jaco Lula, and Poole will start bridging up to get 3 guys still at the front with Verona doing a bulk of the work. We go back and start looking at the peloton, what's happening back there. Nico Dens is on the front of the peloton for Bora Hansgrohe. He's flying down on the left side of the road, coming into the hard right turn to start this climb proper. As Nico Dens comes out, we see Primož Roglič is in a good position, and he's got his teammates all around him. He's looking fantastic. Ben O'Connor did a great job, came in about 10th, but has moved up just behind Bora Hansgrohe as the climb started proper. But Nico Dens is throwing down on the peloton, blowing it up. It's single file, strung out. We're coming into the steep section here as Nico Dens starts to blow. The next teammate for Primož Roglič gets on the front. He'll start pulling until we see Vlasov on the front. As Vlasov is going deep, look at the ugly face there from Vlasov. He's going to look back over his shoulder, and once he does, Primož Roglič throws in a huge acceleration. With the acceleration from Primož Roglič, Enric Mas is on it, but there's a gap to everyone else. Lipovic started to blow. We start seeing behind Lipovic, it's Carapaz now on the front of the group, chasing the 2 GC favorites up there of 2nd and 4th on the general classification, because Carapaz is 3rd, so that's why he's chasing. But Ben O'Connor's starting to drift. As we see Ben O'Connor starting to drift, we see David Gaudu, FDJ, come around Ben O'Connor, and Ben O'Connor suffering at the back of this front group with Carapaz pulling full gas. Now we go back up to the front of the breakaways. 3 riders are going over the top of the KOM. They don't actually show them going over the top, so I'm going to show you the picture of them going down the descent. We're going to see again, it's Verona up there. Barada is up there from Kern Pharma, and of course Poole is up there from DSM. Those 3 riders are going full gas. But it's getting interesting in the back as everyone's still chasing back there. These front groups will start coming together with about 1.8, 1.5 kilometer together to go. As we see, it's Brandon McNulty, UAE Team Emirates, closing up the gap. Now we'll call it about 15 riders up here in the front group as it's coming together with about 1.1 kilometer to go. Verona throws in another tack for Lidl Trek. With his acceleration, he goes under the 1K banner, and then he's brought back at about 800 meters to go. He's on the right side of the group. He starts to move left. Once he moves left, well, that's the green light right there, is because Jaco Lula's Eddie Dunbar throwing in acceleration up the right side. With the rider in the front there, Verona, he's going to go back to the right, and that's pinching off all the guys behind as we see Eddie Dunbar get a solid gap. As Eddie Dunbar is going full gas to the line, it's getting interesting, and it looks like the Jaco Lula rider's got a legitimate shot of winning here. And then we see Max Poole. With Max Poole back there throwing in his acceleration, we see Quentin Hermans jumping behind the wheel of Max Poole, but they can't bring back Eddie Dunbar as he looks back over his shoulder, sits up in disbelief with his hands on his head. Then he crosses the line, arms open, with a huge roar shortly after that, and a punch to the sky to win a stage here for Jaco Lula and Eddie Dunbar. Now second on the stage, it was a bike throw back there for second, as we see Quinten Hermans from Alpecin de Koenig gets second, Max Poole gets third to round out the podium here. Now what happened with George Bennett? Well, he finished in the group right behind, so he's going to make some time up on the general classification, but how much? Let's go back and look at the battle as they're still continuing up the climb. Once I take you to the picture where Carapaz sitting second wheel, just in front of him, I'm going to call it Matteo Cattaneo, my old teammate from Lamprey. He's on the front setting the tempo up there. There's about 8-10 riders, but Ben O'Connor's not in the picture. He still got dropped back there with Lipovets, doing everything he can, damage control for the race leader's red jersey here at the Vuelta a España. But up front, Matteo Cattaneo's just about done pulling. Then we're going to see Landa, Mikel Landis, bridging across to the two riders in front, the GC favorites, Primoz Roglič and Enric Mas, as Landa closes up on the gap. He's got Skillmost and Davide Gaudu on his wheel. That's 5 riders. They go over the top of the KOM. Ben O'Connor back there still can't close the gap, and he's losing time here on stage 11 of the Vuelta a España with Primoz Roglič, Mas, Mikel Landa dropping down the descent. Guess what? Bora Hansgrohe still had one more rider left, right? Remember I told you it was Danny Martinez up there? Well, Danny Martinez pulled the plug out of the breakaway. Now he's back here with Primoz Roglič driving at full gas, as we got 6-7 riders in this group all rotating through, trying to put time on the race leader's red jersey. We go back and see the red jersey. What's happening back there? Well, he backed off just a little bit. Now he's got teammates at the back of that group, and it's about 7-8 riders strong too. As we see, it's Berthet back there, and we see Felix Gall made it back on. Felix Gall had a rough 3-kilometer climb here, but now he's back up there to do damage control with his leader, Ben O'Connor. As the 3 AG2R riders are rotating through at the front, we're going to go back up to the GC group, and just in between them, is Richard Carapaz, who got dropped by the acceleration of Mikel Landa. He's got Sivakov with him. So we got 3 GC groups. Primoz Roglič, Enric Mas in the front of the GC group. Then it's Richard Carapaz and Sivakov. Then it's Ben O'Connor and AG2R. All 3 groups are chasing each other. We're going to see that Skillmost bringing in the GC front group here, 3 minutes and 30 seconds, 31 seconds behind the race winning time here to help Primoz Roglič gain time on Ben O'Connor. But how much time has he gained? Well, first off, it's Carapaz coming across the line, about 15, 16 seconds behind that group. And then we got to go back 37 seconds to see AG2R. Ben O'Connor suffering all the way to the line, but doing damage control for the race leader's red jersey here for AG2R. But there's going to be mix-ups all over the place in the general classification, because Carapaz dropped from 3rd into 4th as Enric Mas moved back up into his podium position here. Then we're going to see Lipovets lost a little bit of time, of course, so he's dropping a little bit further back. And of course, we see George Bennett move up into the top 10 here of the general classification. It was some knucklehead riding from Israel Premier Tech. I just wonder if they could have gained some more time if they just quit messing around and just rode for general classification. When they attacked up the 3rd category climb, there's nothing there. You're not going to get any help. You should have gone up the climb a little bit slower, kept Corbin Strong with you, rotated all 3 guys on the front with George Bennett sitting on. Instead, you guys just argued with everybody left and right and left some time on the table right here of stage 11 of the Vuelta a España without George Bennett really having any kind of shot at winning today's stage. Now, when we start going back and looking at other results here, Carapaz, of course, dropped a little bit of time. But remember, Carapaz crashed, so maybe that had a little bit of effect on his legs. Ben O'Connor in his interview says that his form's been up and down here at the Vuelta a España, and hopefully it'll just start going up here in the later stages, because we're getting into summit finish stages here at the Vuelta a España. So if Ben O'Connor has another bad day in the mountains, he's going to lose big amounts of time here to Primoz Roglič and Enric Mas, and possibly that race leader's red jersey. But at this moment, it's difficult to know, right? We see again that it's Enric Mas is the only rider that's really gone good at every stage here of the Vuelta a España, but he has no teammates really to help him out if they do get the race leader's yellow jersey. So you don't want to take it too soon, Enric Mas, that's for sure. Wait for the last 2 mountain stages before you do. But we start looking at AG2R, Ben O'Connor, where he said, okay, he knows his form's fluctuating. Of course, it's always the short climbs that he's had problems. Stage 4, stage 8, and here at stage 11. And all 3 of those stages are the stages that Primoz Roglič and Bora Hansgrohe lit it up. But when Primoz Roglič goes bad, like on stage 9, Ben O'Connor comes good. So what do we got to look forward to from stage 12 all the way on here at the Vuelta a España? You make the call. I can't. It's too difficult up here on the Butterfly Effect. Like and subscribe. I'll call it live right after the race. See you then.